obviously the Russia situation is deteriorating very, very quickly. And really the article that needs to be written, that needs to be gotten out to the people of the world, not just the U.S., is the timeline of the Ukraine crisis. The State Department admittedly spending $5 billion to destabilize Russia, overthrowing the elected government, attacking the police and military, who were not doing anything, calling it a peace revolution so that the EU can come in and suck the country dry. And then Russia grabs its gas pipelines and military bases in the area traditionally part of Russia, and then masses troops, knowing that NATO is massing troops and mercenaries there. And we reported on that a month ago. We reported on it days before it was in mainstream news that the CIA director was in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. The media denied that. They denied that there were U.S. troops or mercenaries massing. And then today it's like, oh, by the way, we're moving into Poland and other surrounding areas, preparing to engage Russia. And then you've got Lavrov, the foreign minister, and we're going to play this audio and video coming up, saying if you engage any of our troops, we're going to militarily respond. I mean, this is beyond Cuban Missile Crisis type stuff. And the average American literally has no idea even where Ukraine is, has no idea who the players are. And again, I'm not saying Putin's an angel or the Russians are good. The fact is the globalists are the ones starting the war in Syria, starting the overthrow in Libya, starting the overthrow in Egypt, starting the overthrow in Serbia, starting the overthrow, Ukraine, you name it, using al-Qaeda. And we just played video on Monday, and we're going to play it again coming up, of real al-Qaeda with their al-Qaeda flags, launching high-tech, modern, surface-to-air missiles, surface-to-air missiles at helicopters and jet aircraft of the Assad regime. And our media is acting like this is some type of wonderful deal. Here's the Daily Mail, though, telling the truth about it today. Benghazi attack could have been prevented if U.S. hadn't switched sides in war on terror and allowed 500 million of weapons to reach al-Qaeda militants, reveals damning report. And we're going to go over this report and the different CIA officers and others that have gone public. They didn't switch sides. Criminal elements that have hijacked the government have always been sock puppeting and funding and opening the door for and shepherding and giving aid and comfort to al-Qaeda. In the West, George Soros and others heading up NATO, destabilizing Ukraine, overthrowing the elected Ukrainian government. And when Russia responds to secure its holdings in the East, only a small portion of the nation, when NATO is seized over 90%, it is then billed as a Russian invasion, and a new Cold War has officially been launched. U.S. troops, mercenaries, NATO troops have been in Ukraine the entire time. They are now moving into Ukraine and Poland, and missile systems are being aggressively brought in to encircle Russia. Extreme provocation. I watched this morning on television, on the Communist News Network, CNN, the 3-star U.S. general assigned to NATO with U.S. troops under NATO flag pouring off of transport aircraft in Poland. Now, the Russians 2 weeks ago said the CIA director was there. They're getting ready to launch an offensive against us on our border. Our controlled media said that wasn't true. Then suddenly shootings began, bombings began, and it was confirmed the CIA director was there to basically command the next phase of the operation to try to create provocations using low-intensity asymmetrical warfare to get the Russians to respond so that the media can say, oh, my gosh, the Russians are attacking us. I guess so, some new physical theater war can start with the Russians. I mean, I guess that's the real aim here. The problem is the Russian government is autocratic, corrupt, has a lot of serious problems. But compared to the globalists and the banksters that run Europe and the U.S., the Russians are promoting pro-family. The Russians are promoting having children. The Russians are promoting low taxes. In fact, they have lower taxes than us on average now. The Russians are trying to reform themselves. And by the West attacking them, it will now end those reforms as Russia becomes hardline. They don't want a renaissance in Russia. And that's what this is all about. War is good for autocrats and insider traders and defense contractors and big banks. The Rothschilds famously, in a series of European wars over a 200-year period, from the 1700s right into 1900, famously would finance all sides of a war. And sometimes you'd have up to 4 sides. There wouldn't be just 2 sides. They would finance all sides. And they ended up ruling financially all of Europe, and still do to this day. The UN, the carbon trading companies, the big investment banks, you name it, Rothschilds are at the center of every one of them. So are the Rockefellers, the kings of the U.S. oligarchs. Every time Russia arrests an oligarch, they laugh at Putin and say, you can't get our holdings or our money, and it comes out in the London newspapers that indeed it's a Rothschild's front company. The Rothschilds sued over newspapers reporting on this and lost the lawsuit, and the judge said, this trial found that you are puppet masters. This trial found that you are running front companies. And it is the same story happening again. And so the West gets to have more defense spending, more police state, now a new anti-Russian sentiment. And the Russians, they don't have to worry about not having enough food or not having enough of an economy growing. They can now say the West is causing it, which is actually true, but it will now kill reforms in Russia. And so we march further into the dark ages here. Here's the headlines. Pentagon deploying troops to thwart Russia. USA Today. U.S. troops arrive in Poland for exercises across Eastern Europe amid Ukraine crisis. Commanding General says that it's, quote, to send a message to Russia and to counter Russia. U.S. moves troops to allies near Russia as tensions flare in eastern Ukraine. Wall Street Journal. Kerry tells Russia of deep concern over Ukraine. Pro-Russia insurgents hold U.S. journalists captive. So it's now accelerating. The Russians will fight back, and their Russian enclaves will start getting aggressive. Yeah, holds journalists captive. I bet they're journalists, all right. Yeah, right. Let's continue here, ladies and gentlemen. Russia says conducting military drill, again, near Ukraine. They've built up, they say 40,000, more like 200,000 troops from what I've seen on the border, including rolling in on record new medium and long-range mobile ICBMs with MIRV tips, multiple reentry devices, multiple warheads and dummy warheads to defeat space-based lasers and ground-based lasers and missile interceptors. Here is NPR acting like Putin's running everything and isn't on the defense and isn't being defeated right now. Putin's chess moves in Ukraine, brilliant tactics, but bad strategy, question mark? Let me explain who is on the offense here, ladies and gentlemen. The big banks that conquered the United States and are taking all of our land and raising taxes until we go bankrupt. We are under attack by the very same people attacking the Russians. And the reason the globalists keep winning is they're masters at playing us off against each other. I keep saying I'm going to play this again. Will you guys cue up the From Russia with Love, Siamese Fighting Fish piece? I'm going to play that again because that's what this is all about. This explains everything. This is the globalist system. They sit above the nations, driving us into debt, playing us off against each other, when we should be in absolute collaboration with the Russians with technological next level systems of energy, space exploration, everything. The United States is natural partners with the Russians. We owe the Russians an absolute debt of apology for, with the British intelligence in 1917, declassified. This is mainstream news. Look it up. $25 million in gold brought in by Joseph Stalin, the head bank robber and money collector for V.I. Lenin, and bringing in upwards of 100,000 U.S. sheep-dipped soldiers who spoke Russian. First and second generation Russian immigrants out of New York City and other areas to invade Russia and overthrow it. And then, why do you think the left in this country supported Lenin and Stalin? Because they came from us, just like Hitler came from us. Everything comes from England and the United States. Look at England and the U.S. today. It runs the world. The language runs the world. Haven't people figured that out? I'm not demonizing England and the U.S. England and the U.S. are wondrous, rich cultures of good people. But because we were smart, vicious, aggressive, the evil got control of us and has been using us to build their world government while they prepare us for destruction. You don't just think they want to overthrow Assad and kill everybody, do you? Because he's a industrialized area and because the women don't have to wear hoods over their heads. They're wearing hoods on their heads now in al-Qaeda-held areas. Here is the London Daily Mail. Benghazi attack could have been prevented if U.S. hadn't switched sides in war on terror and allowed 500 million of weapons to reach al-Qaeda militants, reveals damning report. Yeah, we told you about that before it even happened, that it was coming. And now they admit Benghazi was a missile transfer. Do you understand what a fraud this is, folks? It's not U.S. support. It's globalist support for al-Qaeda, using the U.S. as a membrane, as a fence, as a foil, as a go-between. We either learn how they're dominating us, the global technocrats that are eugenicists. That's their identity. That's their ideology. We either learn the real enemy's identity and how they're, it's like an alien, might as well be aliens from another planet. I'm not actually saying that's what it is. I'm saying think of it like that. The globalist, how would aliens take over the planet? They would play us off against each other. We're going to play the Russians and the Americans off against each other. And then explain Spectre's plan. The same thing's in Captain America. Hydra is infiltrating both sides, playing them off against each other. Ian Fleming was a top OSS commander who wrote these books. They're telling you how they do it.